Hi grade 8s and welcome to another week of cooking. Today we're doing spaghetti with meatballs and I am not an Italian speaker, so I'm not sure of the correct pronunciation of spaghetti con polpette, but that's my best attempt. So we've got 3 components to work with and we've got to make the meatballs, the sauce and cook the pasta. Because we need to have all of those 3 components ready at the same time, then we need to get the water onto the boil to cook the pasta. So I'll put that on straight away. You need about half a saucepan of water. So put that on to come to the boil. Remember to get it to the boil most quickly, turn it up as high as it goes and put your lid on. When that has come to a rolling boil, that's when you want to add your pasta. When you add the pasta, remember to leave the lid off and turn it down to about halfway and monitor it so that it keeps bubbling on the surface but doesn't go off the boil. To make the meatballs, we need to get half an onion, dice that up finely. And you actually put just all of the ingredients in a bowl and mix them to make the meatballs. It's really easy. So we've got the 200 grams of mince, half a cup of fresh breadcrumbs. Now the breadcrumbs help to bind the meatballs so they don't fall apart. They absorb some of the moisture and prevent the meat actually from drying out and becoming too tough. So it also stops the meatballs from falling apart so readily. There's a little bit of bacon in this mixture and that adds a bit of seasoning and flavour. And then we've got 1/8 of a teaspoon of dried chilli. That's going to add a little bit of spice and heat. Remember, a lot of teaspoon sets don't have 1/8 of a teaspoon, so if you get 1/4 of a teaspoon and just put in half of it. We also have some parmesan and a few Italian herbs, and then we need a tablespoon of beaten egg. To do that, just break that into a jug, beat it up with a fork and measure out a tablespoon. The egg also acts as a binder in the recipe. It sets as the meatballs cook and kind of holds it all together. It makes it a softer texture too. Then the last ingredient is we've got a tablespoon of finely chopped parsley. It doesn't matter whether you use curly parsley or Italian parsley. When you've got all of the ingredients in the bowl, it's just a matter of mixing that through. You can even use your hands actually. You need to also dice the onion as finely as you can. If you've got great big chunky bits, it's more likely that it will fall apart. The finer you can get the onion, the more likely they'll stick together better. So I'm actually using my hands to squash that all together and to mix through the egg and the breadcrumbs evenly throughout the meaty part. The parmesan and the bacon is going to add some seasoning as well to the meatballs. Then you want to form them into shapes the size of a walnut that's in its shell, so smaller than a golf ball. So that's nicely combined. Once the water has come to the boil, take the lid off and leave that off. And when you're adding your spaghetti, you can either just put it in and gradually as the boiling water softens, that will slide in, or you can break it in half so you won't have as longer pieces and just let that fall into the water and that will get submerged. Give that a stir so that it doesn't stick together and it hasn't stuck to the base of the saucepan. Leave the lid off and reduce the heat till about halfway or a little less. And you just need to monitor that it keeps on boiling. You need to cook that for about 12 minutes until it's al dente. Al dente means to the tooth, a little bit of firmness in the centre, but you can cook it just to your liking if you prefer it soft all the way through. Okay, to form these meatballs, just take clumps, squash, and roll. so that they are tightly compacted. If you flip from one hand to another, squashing it, and then a little roll to make the outside smooth and even. Okay, once you've got your meatballs rolled, then you're ready to start cooking. Add a tablespoon of oil to your frying pan on a medium heat. Let that preheat. Otherwise, when you add in the meatballs, the oil will just soak into the meatballs rather than searing the outside. So about 30 seconds to preheat and then pop them in. In the meantime, we're ready to start preparing our sauce. So you need to dice up your other half an onion. Once the oil is preheated, tip your frying pan so that it's going to spread evenly over the base, and pop the meatballs in. Use a pair of tongs so that you're not dropping them from high above, otherwise that will cause the oil to splash and it's dangerous. And you want to avoid turning and returning the meatballs lots of times, because that's more likely to cause them to break and fall apart. So just pop them in and leave them for 3 minutes or so, and then you can turn them for the first time and then give them another cook on the next side, and then you might just find 1 or 2 areas where they need to be turned when they're nearly cooked. So with the sauce, we've got our onion diced. We can put the remaining oil, which is another 2 teaspoons, into that saucepan and preheat that, and I'll add the onion in. After the onion has gone opaque and maybe there's a little bit of brown on the edges of some of the pieces, then add in your garlic, and that just needs to cook for about 30 seconds to cook that through. And then you're just simply going to add all of those remaining sauce ingredients. There's some stock powder and water. And then chopped tomatoes and tomato paste. After the meatballs have been cooking for about 10 minutes, they've been nicely golden then on a few sides, you can then transfer them into the sauce. Make sure you've stirred the sauce occasionally to prevent it from sticking. By transferring them into the sauce, you add some of the flavour that's developed in the meatballs to permeate through the sauce. You could just place the meatballs straight onto the spaghetti, but it's nice to get that extra flavour throughout the whole sauce. And now we're ready to serve. We need to strain the pasta, pour the whole lot through a sieve, and then divide your pasta up between your bowls. And then divide your meatballs up between your bowls so you get a similar amount per serve. And then you can pour the remaining sauce over. And there's your spaghetti with meatballs ready to roll. Hope you love it. See you next time. Today we're doing spaghetti con polpette. Today we're doing Today we're cooking spaghetti con polpette, which is pronounced badly, actually.